like to say your name so everybody knows everybody?
I'm Richard. I'm from Chicago, and I'm visiting Australia for 3 months.
I'm Sam. I'm basically northern New South Wales based. I'm travelling with Richard, carting him around basically. I'm his driver.
He's my blessed driver.
I need one of those. I'm Beta. I'm from Melbourne.
Megan. Margaret.
Jerome. Gilbert. Brown.
Well, I'll give you the spiel. I've given this for years and a lot of you have heard it before. We'll go through it again, give you a brief idea what it's all about. We don't teach you anything here, nor do we tell you anything. All we do is point toward and ask you to look to where we're pointing to see for yourself. So no matter what you believed or no matter what you've done with the intention of getting somewhere, I can tell you there's nobody that can give you anything and nothing you can really get. Now it's not anything new we're pointing out. If you look in the ancient traditions, you'll see it in every tradition. It's the base of them all. Though it gets obscured with a lot of the other crap that goes on and obscures it. In Hinduism, for instance, they call it Advaita. And Advaita translated means non-duality. And they try to describe non-duality by saying one without a second. And they put that without a second on because even the idea of one implies that there could be other than one. So to cancel out any idea there's anything other than that, they say it's one without a second. And you'll see the same thing in the ultimate teachings of Buddhism, where they say it's non-conceptual, ever fresh, presence awareness. Just this, nothing else. And if you look at that closely, you'll see they're pointing out that what you are exactly right now, because without any concepts, is there anybody who's not aware of being present? Or that presence awareness is not right with you right now? Again, it is seemingly obscured by concepts. A lot of the traditions talking about the supreme or reality will say it's omnipresence, omnipotence, omniscience. They're not talking about three things, but three aspects of the one. Omnipresence means total presence, omnipotence, total power, and omniscience, total intelligence. So if what they're saying is true in all those statements, does that leave room for you or me or anything at all that could be outside of that totality? Would it be the totality if there was a totality in you or the totality in me? So you see, and also you see what they're pointing to. They're pointing out that there can be absolutely no duality in non-duality. So to try to get to non-duality from the point of duality is an impossibility, because the whole dualistic manifestation is appearance only. And you'll hear that in a lot of the scripts too, when they call the manifestation Maya, or illusion, or appearance. So what we say here right from the start, whether you know it or not, but what you're seeking, you already are. And you must realise from that the search becomes a problem. Because if there's any search going on, there's the implication there that it's something you haven't got now. But if you do this practice or do this meditation or retreat or read this book or do that, you will become something at some future time. Well, don't you see, if you're in that zone, you've moved away from omnipresence into the conceptual belief of time. And the dualistic appearance, trying to get from the dualistic appearance to become one from the two. But it's not two. So the search itself is the problem. I don't use the term God here because we can get confused with that term. Purely and simply we all come from different traditions. Some of us might be atheists, some of us agnostic, some of us Christians, Hindus, Muslims, Buddhists, Jews, or whatever, I start talking about God, you're related to your traditional background and won't see what's being pointed to at all because it'll obscure it in that relating to that background. But I use the term intelligence energy here, and you've got to realise that's just a concept also. And when I'm talking about intelligence, I'm not talking about your intellects, because there are different degrees of intellect in this room. I'm saying have a look out there in nature, because basically this is the natural state we're pointing to. Hi, Leonie. Have a look out there in nature and see there's galaxies forming, planets moving around, Earth orbiting the sun, seasons coming and going, tides coming in and out. Doesn't that imply that the whole of nature is suffused with an innate intelligence, innately in every particle of it? There's not some guy out there sitting on a cloud that's pulling strings. If you pray to him, he'll give you this. Or if you think you do something wrong, he's going to punish you. It's suffusing every particle. And have a look out in nature, and you're no different from nature. Bring it back to where you are. And realise it's that same intelligence that's breathing you right now. It's beating your heart. It's growing your hair in your fingernails. It's digesting your food. It's replacing cells in your body. All quite naturally and effortlessly. What are you doing about any of those things? If you believe that you are that energy. You've got to say to yourself, I've got to take the next breath, or I've got to expand and contract my heart. Or is all that going on naturally and effortlessly? So that's the intelligence energy we're talking about. Another word for intelligence is knowing. And I'm not talking about knowing this or knowing that, but just pure knowing. Can any of you in this room negate that knowingness? Even if you negate it and say, I don't know, you must realise there's got to be a knowingness there that enables you to say it. Now, knowing is something that's happening in the immediacy of this moment. The ing on it is not what was known or what will be known. It's going on right now. That knowing is there. It's beginningless and endless. You can't pinpoint where it starts. You can't pinpoint where it's finished. So it's always this immediacy. And the ing on it gives it something that's happening in the immediacy. And any happening is an activity. And any activity is a movement of energy. So that's where I get the term intelligence energy. Vibrating, patterning and shaping all this manifestation. Now this manifestation is a dualistic appearance. We pointed out there's absolutely no duality and no non-duality, and yet we got this dualistic appearance. And if you look in the ancient texts, they know its appearance because they tell you that it's Maya, it's illusion, it's appearance. It's not the reality. And it doesn't fit the definition of reality because it comes and goes. The definition of reality is that which never changes. But this manifestation is transient. It's constantly changing. So how can it fit the definition of reality? So what is it that never changes? Isn't it that sense of presence, that immediate knowing that's going on always in the immediacy? The timeless presence awareness? Or, as I like to call it, the life essence? So you see, that's why the Buddha could say a couple of thousand years ago, he called it a cognizing emptiness, an emptiness that is suffused with that knowingness, intelligence. And he made the statement that emptiness is form, pointing out that all this manifestation that's vibrating into different patterns and forms is that cognizing emptiness. And he turned it around the other way and said the form can be nothing other than the emptiness. Again, pointing out clearly that there's no duality whatsoever. There's nothing other than that one essence that's appearing, patterning, and expressing as everything. So how could you be anything other than that? And isn't that the Mahavakya, the great word, I am that? Thou art that, this is that, that's that. And I put the term that on it because it's nothing, it's ineffable, ungraspable, no label or concept can fit it. So they use the term that. And we know that in our language, we've known that in our language all along because we say that's the carpet, that's the chair, that's Gilbert, that's Leonie. Take away those labels we put on it, carpet, chair, Gilbert, Leonie. Can you separate the that? without a label. Or, as we call God the human being, God the supreme being, we call ourselves human beings. Take those labels off, supreme and human. Can you separate the beingness without a label? Is there anybody who is not being in this room? That's why we say, start from the fact whether you know it or not that you are already that. And then the search is finished, it's over. You don't have to seek for anything. All that needs to happen then is to see what's coming up and seemingly obscuring it. What is it that's seemingly covering it over and stopping you from recognising or realising that? We say there's no separation anywhere, and you say, how can, if you're new to this, you'll say, how can that be? You know, you see separation all around you. But look into it, investigate it. We say here that the false cannot stand up to the investigation. So it needs to be investigated and seen for yourself, recognised. Are you this body, for instance? And if you believe you're this body, which most of us do until we question and look at it, try and find a point in that body you can say, this is where I begin, this is what I am. And you look as hard as you like, you can't find any spot in this body where you can say, this is where it begins, or this is what I am. And you realise this body is constantly changing. There's cells being replaced, thousands of cells being replaced right now. So if you think of this body, what is this body? Have a look at it. And you'll realise this body's made up of elements. It's made up of air, earth, fire, water, space, just the same as the elements around you. Separate yourself from the elements. Take the air out of your body, see how long it lasts. Take the water, the body's 80% water. Take that away from your body if you can. Get off the earth. Get out of space. You realise, take the body heat, the body temperature of the fire. You realise you can't separate yourself from these elements. And look further into those elements. And you realise all these elements can be broken down to subatomic particles, into pure energy. Again, pointing out it's just a vibrating pattern of energy. Not divided, not separate, but expressing and appearing as everything. Forming, shaping, patterning. But the form can be nothing other than that emptiness. So how can you say that you're this body, this separate entity, this individual? And go a little bit further, where did this body begin? Well, you'll say, I was born. But can anybody actually remember your birth? And you realise you can only go back so far to a point beyond which you don't remember. And that was about 2.5. Beyond that, you've got no idea what was going on. And where do you start, if you think you started? Well, we can go back into that and look at that too. We'll go back as far as your father. That animating life essence, that pure intelligence energy, that was patterning, shaping and forming your father, enabled a sperm to form in your father. A microscopical particle you can't even see with the naked eye. But that sperm was suffused with innate intelligence. The same thing happened in your mother. That animating life essence that patterned, shaped and formed your mother, enabled an ovum to form. That ovum was suffused with intelligence, even though it was a microscope, because it attached itself to the wall of the uterus. It wasn't floating around willy-nilly. And the sperm was full of intelligence because it swam to the ovum. It knew where to go innately, innit? And when those two came together, that blueprint, that chemical blueprint was in those two, came together, it doubled that cell and redoubled it, and the little embryo began to form. Well, if you believe you're that entity, what were you doing about it then? Did you say, I've got to grow a couple of eyes, or put an ear in, or a liver, or maybe a heart, or a few fingers to do? But you realise all that happened naturally and effortlessly. It didn't have to do, there was no entity there doing anything about it whatsoever. And when you were born, did you say, now I've got to take my first breath, or did that innate intelligence know you needed to take that breath? Did you have to learn to fasten onto the nipple? Or that innate intelligence knew what to do? So even back then, what you call you was being lived. That intelligence energy was expressing through that pattern and living it, forming it, shaping it, patterning. And you look at a little child when he's born, that little child's got no idea he's separate. No idea he's separate before. He's seeing things, he's not seeing one homogeneous blob. He's hearing things, he's tasting, touching, smelling, but he hasn't learnt any words at that stage. He hasn't got any words. He's seeing everything just as it is. And what is means it's unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected, just as it is. No sense of separation whatsoever. He might be attracted to one thing and grab it, push something else away. If he's happy, he'll gurgle. If he's something he's not content with it, making the tears will come, the emotion will come up, but he's got no idea he's separate from anything. And it's not about till the age of about 2, 2.5, and the little child begins to learn words from his parents. The capacity of reasoning develops in this human form. Now that capacity of reasoning is a capacity these human forms have, which other animals, birds or insects mightn't have that capacity developed to the extent we have, but they have other capacities much more developed than what we have. A bird has eyesight that's much better than your or my eyesight will ever be. A dog has a sense of smell that's much better than yours and mine will ever be. Tigers and leopards and things like that grow stripes, spots in their fur. Do you think they set out to do that? Or does that innate intelligence will know that those stripes will make a natural camouflage will make them a better predator? Chameleons and things like that will change colour. They don't set out to do that. That livingness, that life essence livingness, expressing patterning through them, just the same as vibrating, expressing patterning through you, knows what is necessary for those particular patterns. So we've got this capacity of reasoning, and it's a very useful capacity. But it's also very self-destructive, because it's a vibration of energy moving in the opposites. It becomes self-destructive. And it's very useful because this building was an idea in somebody's mind once. So were the bricks that shaped and formed it. So was the art on the wall. So was the technology. The thing is, a person say, well, I did that, I invented that. But could they have done it? Could they have lifted a finger, moulded a brick, built the house, or drawn a thing, or turned a screw in the technology, if that life essence wasn't animating, patterning, shaping in that form? So they've taken delivery of it in belief that they, as an entity, can do something, and they've never done a damn thing. It's that life energy that's patterning, shaping and forming and expressing through and as everything. And you have taken the stance in the appearance rather than being as the life energy. That's why they call it ignorance in a lot of the scriptures. Not that we're dull or stupid, it means we ignore our true nature and focus into the appearance and take our stance there. That's why the Sagadatikas say, don't pretend to be what you're not, and don't refuse to be what you are. We're all pretending to be human beings, separate entities, individuals. We're not, and we never were. And we're all refusing to be what we are. What we are is no thing, the unmanifest, the non-dual, pure intelligence energy. And nobody wants to be no thing. So we take our stance as this believed in entity. And if you look at that, you'll see that that's not true either, because what's this word person? Where does that come from? Doesn't it come from persona, the mask? Pointing out that we've got this mask of identity on ourselves and living from that point of view as a separate entity and individual. It never was true, or another way of looking at it is per meaning through and sona meaning sound. True vibration, true movement of energy. So we pointed out you can't be this body. Well, are you this mind? Body-mind entity. That's the belief we've taken on. Well, I will ask ourselves this, can anybody here show me a thing called mind? Is there such a thing that you can grasp and say, this is my mind? Is there anything at all there that says mind, apart from a thought? And if mind is thought, and you believe you are the mind, which particular thought are you? And you realise that sense of presence, that knowing that you are, translates through the mind as the thought I am, the primary thought. But are you that thought? And you look at that, investigate, then you realise you can't be that thought, because you don't think it all day. If you were that thought, you wouldn't lose sight of it. It's not there a lot of the times throughout the day. It's not there when you're asleep. It's not there when you're under an anaesthetic or unconscious. So if you were that thought and that thought disappeared, wouldn't you go with it? Wouldn't it be the end of you? But it's not the end of you. While you're not thinking, that non-conceptual aspect, you're still seeing, you're still hearing, still tasting, touching, smelling. A lot of the heart's beating. There's so much going on that doesn't need the thought. So you can't be that thought. And look into that, investigate that. You've got to see these things for yourself. What is thought when you look at it? And you'll realise that thought, at the very subtle level, when you're thinking silently, there's a sudden very subtle activity going on inside, a subtle activity, a subtle vibration. When it comes out as word, isn't word sound? And isn't sound a vibration? And isn't a vibration a movement of energy? So the words, sounds, voice, ideas, images are still that same intelligence energy at a subtle level than what the body is. But it's the same intelligence energy that's vibrating and patterning, shaping and forming as all this manifestation. That's the totality of it. And the manifestation, the vibration, the energy is no different from that pure intelligence energy. So it's a one essence of one energy appearing and expressing as everything. Again pointing out that you are that. And look at this thing you call mind again and see the way it functions. See, though it's a wonderfully useful instrument, how self-destructive it is and how mechanical it is. Look at your mind and see. You realise that being a vibration, it's always vibrating in the interrelated opposites. If you're not in the past, which is memory, you're in the future, which is anticipation, imagination. And within that range, it's constantly vibrating in the interrelated opposites. It's either good or bad, pleasant, painful, happy, sad, loving, hating, positive, negative. Watch your mind and see if it functions any other way. Always in that vibrating duality. And Shakespeare told you that years ago when he said there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. It's only the thoughts that vibrate and make the opposite. We put the word on it, and that's the boundaries we put upon ourselves. And the Sargadatta tells you too also. He says nothing can trouble you excepting your own imagination. And that's a wondrous statement. You realise the only problem you've ever had is what you imagine or anticipate or ideate. You know? So nothing can trouble you except your own imagination. So you see there's this thought up entity is not what you are either. So the little child can't do much when he's around his parents. He starts to learn words at about 2.5 with his capacity of reasoning. And he learns words like little Johnny. They're telling him, little Johnny, you're a good little boy, you're this, that and the other. They're saying, you know, fussing over him all the time. And he starts to reason, I am this little Johnny. And then he learns words from his parents also, like I and me. What's the opposite of I and me? Isn't it not I, or not me? Where before he's looking out there and seeing everything just as it is, he's got no idea he's separate. Now he's relating, this little Johnny they're talking about, this is I or me. And he reasons, that doesn't fit the description of little Johnny, so that's not I. That's not me. So naturally he feels separate from it. And with that sense of separation comes insecurity and vulnerability. And that's when our search actually starts. From that time on, we're seeking to become secure or whole or complete because we've taken on the belief and the idea that we're separate. And you see that the little child likes a warm, loving family. If he's got a warm, loving family, he's much more secure, less vulnerable. In the old days, what would families do? They'd form into tribes. The bigger and stronger my tribe, the more secure, less vulnerable. And isn't that going on today? Nations form into nations, and nations go to war with nations because of that sense of insecurity and vulnerability. The nation next door's got the oil, and if I'm not careful, they'll take me over and take my wealth, so I'll get in first, or they got the bomb or whatever. And so this constant conflict is going on because of this belief in separation. So you can't do much with I or me. So what happens to this I or me? Little child's learning more words, and you've got to realise that every word you've ever spoken or ever likely to speak has been learnt or acquired or picked up somewhere along the line. You had no words until you've been acquired or picked up or learnt. So you see, the word is not the thing. It never was the thing. It never was that. It's all been acquired or picked up. And that's what another thing we need to understand. The word's not the thing. We point that out by saying you can take the word water and you can mouth it as much and often as you like, but that word won't quench your thirst. Or the word fire doesn't burn your mouth when you speak of it. You realise the word is not the thing. So little Johnny's got this I thought. You can't do much with I thought. So what he adds to that I thought, events, experiences and conditioning, things that have happened to us, we're added on to it. And you'll see you've all done this. Like I'm Bob, I'm Australian, a good fella, not so good, got low self-esteem, or I'm fearful, or I'm unhappy. All these concepts about things that have happened to me added onto that I thought. And I formed a mental picture, a mental image of what I believe myself to be. The energy of belief going into it has made it seemingly real, substantial, and concrete, because it's got a belief in it without question is going on day in, day out. It's reinforced not only by myself, but by my parents, school, society, and nation. They teach us to look out there, to acquire, to gather, to add to accumulate whatever we can, which we think will make us whole or complete. Not realising that we were complete and whole in the first place. So we're doing that continually. So something comes up, you see, we've got this mental image, we've added on to this I thought, and that mental image is what we call the self-centre, the reference point, or the ego. And that's all that this ego is a conceptual image you've got of yourself. And you'll see that in all the scriptures too, that the ego is the big problem. And they tell you to sublimate this ego, push it under the carpet, jump on it, squash it, do whatever you can to get rid of it. Not realising, but anybody trying to do anything about it is the ego itself trying to get rid of itself. Another impossibility. What you need to do is look and investigate and see it was a fiction in the first place. It never existed. So see how it works. Something comes up, and then we've lost our spontaneity over the years because we continue relating to this reference point, this me, this I. So all our problems are problems of relationship, all relative to this reference point. And any relationship, any relativity is dualism. And we pointed out in the first place you can never get to non-duality from duality. So it's an impossible task. So something comes up and I relate it to the me, a memory, I lose its spontaneity, and I say I like it. Oh yes, I've experienced this before, it was good. And I've got to keep it there. But the good things, like everything else, because the manifestation is transient, constantly changing, they can become very ordinary after a while. Or they start to change and move away. And we don't want this to go. So what happens? Well, there's a resistance to it. The me, the believed in me, tries to keep it there. And in that resistance there is conflict. Any resistance you're in is conflict. And conflict is disease. If you're in conflict, you're uneasy. Notice it when you're in conflict. You're uneasy, that's disease. It will manifest as disease to keep it there long enough. The same thing, something comes up we don't like. I've got to get rid of this. I've related to the me a memory and it wasn't too good. So again, resistance. Again, conflict. Again, disease. And this constant conflict that goes on is what forms our psychological suffering. Brings up the fear, the anger, the anxiety, the stress, the jealousy, the envy, the guilt, the shame, the remorse. All these psychological conflicts come about because of that resistance. So me is the cause of all my problems. And those psychological problems, the anger, the fear and all the rest, are the effects of that cause me. And that's all the so-called karma is cause and effect. But what happens if I investigate the cause me and see that what we're saying here that is a fiction, hasn't got any existence, hasn't got any substance? What's going to happen then? If I can't relate to a cause, can there be an effect without a cause? Well, you realise there can't be an effect without a cause. So all these effects that I worked on for years, trying to get rid of and lose sight of and sublimate them and do this and that, they don't have to be worked on because they fall away of themselves and they've got nothing to relate to. We talk about the natural state. Look in the natural state and see for yourself. The whole manifestation is dualism. There couldn't be day without night, couldn't be silence without sound, couldn't be movement without stillness, couldn't be winter without summer. But in nature, if you look closely, there is no reference point. No reference point whatsoever. So day doesn't fight with night, night doesn't fight with day, winter doesn't fight with summer, stillness doesn't fight with movement, silence doesn't fight with sound. Each comes about, plays around in their turn, disappears, and the other one takes over. So the constant division in the dualistic manifestation is there, but it's not fixated on and believed in some reference point which causes all its problem. So the same in manifests the same as going on in this body, that dualistic patterning. But this constant conflict is going on here because of that belief in the reference point. So all our problems are problems of relationship, and relationship is duality. And we say there's no such thing as duality. As we pointed out at the start, it's one without a second. Just this, nothing else. Nothing other than one. So we need to look at this self-centre and see if it's real or not. And we do that by pointing out and ask you to look at this. Everybody is seeing right now. Isn't that a fact? And everybody is hearing right now. Well, look at that. You opened your eyes this morning. Did you say, I've got to start seeing? Or was seeing immediately there? And hasn't that same seeing been going on all the morning? You've come from different places, seen all sorts of things in that seeing. It's been going on all the time. The actual seeing hasn't changed, but the content of seeing is constantly changing. It's changing right now. If you look around the room, you'll see different things. But I still realise it's still in that same ordinary, everyday, commonplace seeing. The same way you're hearing right now. When you woke up this morning, you didn't have to say, I'm going to start hearing. The hearing was there immediately, and if somebody had called you in deep sleep, you'd have heard it, saying that the hearing was there all the time. And you've been hearing different sounds, it's all noise and all the rest of it all the morning, but it's taking place in the same hearing. So the hearing and seeing and having. And ask yourself this, does my eye tell me I see? Well, have a look at that. And you realise you're seeing through the eye, but your eye's not saying, look at this, Bob, or look at that, and it's not analysing and saying this is good or that's bad. The seeing is happening through the eye, and it's translated by the thought, I see. But when it's translated by the thought, I see, it's not just a bare translation of I see. It's me, Bob, the entity that now believes it has the capacity and capability of seeing. So the same thing is happening with the hearing. My ear doesn't tell me I hear. The hearing's happening through the ear. And again, it's translated by the thought I hear. And again, as soon as it's translated by that thought, it believes that me, Bob, the believed in entity, now thinks it has the capacity of hearing. You've got to realise that that seeing and hearing are just translations. That's what the thinking is capable of doing, is just translating things. It hasn't got any capacity to see or to hear itself. Now ask yourself this. Can that thought, I see, can a thought actually see? And you realise that a thought can't see. Thought's not seeing anything at all. All it's doing is translating on what has been, what is happening in the seeing. But of itself, it can't see. Can the thought I hear? And you realise that the thought I hear can't hear. So this entity it's attributed to hasn't got the capacity of seeing, hasn't got the capacity of hearing. So is the thought I am aware, is that your awareness? You realise that can't be your awareness. The thought I choose, the choice maker. You realise the thought I choose can't be the choice maker. So you realise the thought of itself has no substance and no independent nature. This ego hasn't got any substance or any independent nature. It cannot stand on its own. I mean by that, how many thoughts does a corpse have? If you take that life essence out of the body, you've got a corpse. It's got eyes, it's got ears, it's got all the organs and everything like that. But there's no functioning intelligence energy enlivening or animating it. So that can't do anything of itself. So that thought can't do a thing like a computer's got all that information on. Take the power off, what good's that information do? So you see from that, the disbelieved in ego hasn't got any power, hasn't got any independent nature, has never done anything at all. If it got no substance or any independent nature now, when was it ever true? When was it ever real? And you realise going back to the same time you were born, even before that, there's never been a separate entity there that had any individual power or independent nature itself. So you realise you've always been that animating life essence, that intelligence in you. It's the beingness, the livingness, the actuality of what you really are. And that to the mind is no thing. And you realise that whomever you might talk about the saints, saviours and seers and all the rest of them in the world, Marama, Jesus Christ, the Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, Moses, whatever, nobody, not one of them, have ever gone beyond no thing. And that no thing, everything appears and disappears. The patterns, shapes and forms that appear in it are no thing in their essence, but not the way they vibrate a pattern. So everything is that in essence. So that's what we point out to, and you can question that or argue with it, to fight with it, to do what you like, or tell us your version if you like. So where you go.
Some things you say seem so close and so obvious and so clear. Like I remember one thing you were saying, we're all pretending to be what we're not, and we can all relate to that in many, many circumstances, knowing we're putting on a face this way or that way, or is this how you be somebody by pretending, or is this the start of it? And then you said that we're all refusing to be who we are, and that's a little bit more hard to reach. I mean, can reach that intellectually, but we don't feel it so eminently as the way we feel that we're our falseness. We feel that, but we don't feel our refusal. It's a little bit harder to relate to it or to feel it experientially. It seems like a good idea, but how do we get closer to that?
Well, what's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? To do that, you need to pause the thought for a moment. What can you say if you pause the thought?
I think you ask what's wrong with right now if you don't think about it. And so you pause the thought and just
What can you say without a thought?
I think you can only say something retrospectively then.
No, you can't say
Put this thought back in.
You can't say anything at all without bringing a thought into it. But you haven't disappeared. You were still seeing. You were still hearing. Still tasting, touching, smelling. Still holding the microphone. What were you? You were no thing. You had no concept in yourself. It wasn't hard to get to at all, was it? You were no thing. You've got to put a concept on yourself to become something. There was presence awareness there, heart beating. There's so much functioning going on, except a thought. So you didn't have a reference point to relate to, a concept. And the Buddhists tell you, give it to you in one sentence. They say the Dzogchen translator means the great perfection. The great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. When you pause the thought, no concepts, and that awareness, what you call awareness, knowing that you are, disappear, was there immediately, wasn't it? In all its fullness. You couldn't say anything about it because it's invisible, it's inexpressible, ephemeral. But you couldn't negate it. Didn't disappear without it.
So then a way to say it might be that the refusal to be who I am is the insistence that I must conceptualize it.
Well,
and then
that's the habit pattern that's come up. You can't conceptualize it. You can never do a thing. But that's the pattern that's been running in the belief. You see, the erroneous belief we've taken on is kept reinforced. You've got to understand that a belief is not the actual. Any belief is not the actual. The definition of belief is an unquestioned acceptance of something in the absence of reason. Acceptance of an alleged fact without positive knowledge or proof. Now, the only actuality you're absolutely certain of is the fact of your own being. If I ask you, do you believe that you are, or do you know that you are, what would you tell me?
I'd have to say I know that I am.
Exactly. And nobody can knock you off that perch.
Right. No belief could
And
trump
nobody
that.
else.
Trump that.
You
No.
know that you are. You can't negate that knowing. That's the difference between believing and knowing. You pause a thought, you know, what's wrong with right now if you don't think about it? To do that, you've got to pause a thought. You haven't disappeared. You haven't fallen apart. Seeing and all the other things happen, and thinking has stopped. In that moment, you are prior to thought. Because that essence is, that all these thoughts are appearing on is still there and all. If you were the thought and you paused the thought, that would be the finisher. But it's not. That knowingness is still there. People talk about being prior to the mind, and they think they try to do this and do that to get there, but realising just the fact of just a bare pausation of thought. You are prior to thought. Watch that, stay with that a little while, and you'll see the difference between pure intelligence and thinking. That's the pure intelligence. And the thinking comes upon it and translates and does all sorts of things with it. So, but that thinking has been so closely aligned to that intelligence, it's come to believe it is the intelligence itself. Just like you put a piece of iron in the fire, it'll get red like fire, it'll get hot like fire. Pick it up, it'll burn you. So it's taken on the qualities of fire. But take it out of the fire, it can't do any of those things. The same here, that life essence, this thinking is seemingly taken on the belief that Japanese seemingly taken on the qualities of that life essence, and you come to believe that you are. That thinking, that thought up entity is the life, is the beingness itself. A separate beingness of that you take it to be. But you realise it can't do a thing without that life essence. It's got no power at all. Where must you be functioning from then? Functioning was going on, wasn't it? You were breathing.
Going on. It's just going on.
Yeah, you were
I don't know if you could say where.
Well,
from where.
You must see. Could it be going on without that, knowing that you are without that life energy?
No, it couldn't.
Well, you must be that life energy, which enables the pattern, shapes, and forms to express what that life energy is. You can never grasp with a concept, but it's there in all its immediacy. You can put all sorts of labels on, but no label will fit it.
So you were saying, okay, your eyes are seeing, or you're seeing, but you're thinking, okay, my eyes are seeing. You're hearing, you're thinking, okay, my ears must be hearing, but they're already hearing. They're not doing anything about it.
No.
So then you translated that to your doing, and you think I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, but it's the same as seeing. It's just already happening.
Yes.
So then I'm doing a spiritual practice, and I'm getting a result. I'm doing a chant, and I'm feeling the energy, let's say, whatever that is. So you're not doing that chant. It's just happening.
Yeah, but the point is, while you believe you're doing it, you're still stuck in the trap. While you believe you're doing it to get some result, you're stuck in the trap. If you're doing it, just do it. Let it happen. Let the functioning happen.
So if you're doing a chant and you're worshiping or something,
well, there's a subtle idea that I'll get something.
You're feeling wonderful, just enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
Just celebrate it and be grateful and say, what a miracle that I can do a chant and feel this energy.
Yes, and then you can...
Not even I can do it, right?
No, you know very well. This couldn't happen without that life essence that I am. Could it?
So whatever...
So you give credit to where credit is due to that. If you like to use that term, the translation of I amness or sense of presence, but you don't need that.
But yet, at one point you were saying that the capacity for logic came, or a human found a capacity to abstract and to have logic. And then you said it, I didn't really get it exactly. You said something about it was a vibrational energy or a vibration, and it could sometimes be destructive.
Yeah, well, it vibrates in the opposite. It's, you know, as I say, all this in this room was an idea in somebody's mind once. That was something useful, isn't it? But when it tells you, when it puts the boundaries on you, it tells you you're not good enough. You can't do this or you can't do that. And the words they put upon it, the labels, they're the boundaries we put upon ourselves, good and bad, pleasant, painful. And the biggest one we put upon ourselves is, after all, I'm only human. But you call yourself a human being, you call God the Supreme Being, take away the word human, take away the word supreme, Separate the beingness then. You've taken the boundaries or limitations of yourself as though there's just beingness. Haven't got the idea or concept that I'm a limited human being anymore. You are that beingness. And there is no thing not being.
So those limitations of the abstract capability seem to come as a contraction, like some kind of a squeeze on the body, like what we call anxiety.
Yeah. Yes. Anxiety, fear, depression, all these things are based on the idea of the belief in that separate entity, the limitations are on it. And you'll see that, and then a lot of the inventions and things, people will say, "Oh, pondering over this for days or something, and I went to sleep one night and was there next morning." Things like that happen. It came up just like that. Get the me out of the road, and God knows what talents are there that you haven't utilised already in that pattern.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Just get the me out of the road and all the talents are available. You can do anything then. Totally anything in your life.
Yeah. But that'll be done. There won't be anyone doing it. That's the way it'll express.
Just the energy with intention that happens.
It's absolutely brilliant how you use the logic of the mind to bind the mind. Just the way you speak, that there's nowhere to go, there's no outs, it's just, you can have an argument and almost immediately you go straight to the core and just chop it off and it's gone.
One without a second, not two.
I'm just in awe of the of how easy it is, and how easy you make it by not deviating off into some spiel about some heady thing that doesn't matter. Thanks.
So I'm trying to think about that logical capacity, right? And you said that the destructive part of it is when it just starts
never
to set
think it
up
out.
boundaries.
Don't try and think about it.
Yeah.
Because we say here, you'll never find the answer in the mind. Because the mind is a dualistic vibration. When you start looking in the mind for the answer, it'll bring up another one and another one and another one. It goes on forever and ever vibrating into more and more concepts. That's what happens with all these great traditions. They vibrate into many concepts, you see. So there's that, when you look at that, people have been searching 10, 20, 30 years. And they've looked in the mind earnestly and sincerely, done all sorts of practice, but never found the answer. After all that time, your intelligent person mightn't have just dawned on us that maybe I've been looking in the wrong direction. You realise, yes, well, maybe I have been. I've looked there and I've searched diligently and never got there. Then ask myself, what way is there out of the mind? And you realise that whichever way I look will always be in the mind. And there's only one way out of the mind, full stop. Full stop or pause of thought. And I pause that thought, conceptualising or thinking has stopped, and then I haven't disappeared, I haven't fallen apart, so I've readily seen the difference between pure intelligence and thinking. And you're already there. And that's what's happened in all these great traditions. In Hinduism they call it Advaita. They translate Advaita as non-duality, and they describe non-duality as one bit out a second. But then they start discussing it. They form the 3 gunas, the 5 tattvas, the 33 something else, the 108 something else, and put all these different, and go on forever and ever. Buddhism the same, they've got Theravada, Hinayana, Mahayana, Dzogchen, Zen, and a dozen other different things. When the Dzogchen, at the ultimate teachings of it, as they say, the great perfection is non-conceptual awareness. Non-conceptual, ever-fresh presence awareness. Just this, nothing else. It's all the divisions that go on. Christianity the same, Father, Son and Holy Ghost, Trinities and that's what they all, instead of leaving it as it is, one, they try to conceptualise it to mind.
There's almost an eagerness there for the mind to launch into complexity.
Yeah.
Like it wants detail and it wants to think and it wants to create all this stuff that doesn't matter. I see it regularly in my own functioning. It doesn't want simplicity.
Well, it doesn't really have the power to want or not want anything. So,
yeah, whatever it is.
I mean, there's a good example in Buddhism, for instance. The cutting insight that the Buddha had was that there's no self. But then you speak to a Buddhist and they'll tell you that, no, you can't have enlightenment. It's going to take you 1,000 lifetimes. Now, how do you get from a cutting insight that there's no self to somebody saying that was 2,000 years later? It's obviously vibrated into complete fallacy because what's available is right here, right now, because that's all there is. I am. Yeah. You can't cut it off. You can't deny that beingness, and it's conceptless. And that's the beauty of it, but it's almost as if nobody wants that, and yet everybody is that.
Yeah, want was the wrong word to use. I'm not sure what the right word is. It feels like the mind is like a racehorse, before the gates open, and the second there's an opportunity for complexity, it's just boom, it's gone. It's like down all these detailed problems and.
But then it all disperses if you ask yourself, what is the mind?
Yeah,
is there such a thing? Can anybody show me a thing called mind? Nothing there but any substance or any independent nature. But thoughts, what's a thought? Thoughts are vibrating pattern of energy also.
Just because we can't see it, we don't know where it begins and ends. Does that mean it doesn't exist and that it has any less validity?
Well, if you can't see it, it's invisible. You'll never see it. So you'd stop trying to see it, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily.
Well, if you know something is invisible, what chance have you ever got of seeing it?
Well,
So you realise you can't see it. Full stop again.
there are many things that are invisible that are not seen by the naked eye that are still there that we still.
You know that they are. Well,
experience.
yes. Well, yes. Well, you know that sense of presence is there, but you're not seeing it with the naked eye. You're not knowing it. You're not feeling it. It's no thing to the mind. But you can't negate it. But
all the can'ts of what we can't do doesn't take us necessarily to an answer. 0 plus 0 plus 0 does not necessarily equal the infinite intelligence and one. Necessarily. I don't know.
What happens if you full stop? Do you need an answer?
And if nothing happens, what does that mean?
Pardon?
Can we conclude anything?
Happening is
nothing happening.
Have a look. When you full stop, if you just full stop just then, there was so much happening that wasn't recognised. You didn't stop breathing. Your heart didn't stop contracting and expanding. Cells were being replaced in your body. Food was being digested. Hair and fingernails were still growing. Yeah.
So therefore, and then
all that happened was some.
And therefore, it's the therefore that I struggle with.
That you which?
The therefore, nothing stopped. We didn't fall apart. The hair kept growing, and the fingernails kept growing, and we didn't disappear. And therefore, we then come up with a concept that there is this non-conceptual awareness.
Yeah, but you understand that's a concept too.
That's right.
And you're not going to hold that either.
So
have the concept,
non-conceptual awareness is
understand a concept is just a concept, and you'll have lots of concepts. Doesn't mean to stay. Like, you got to remember, while you're embodied, you're going to think. And you're going to think in the same way, always in the interrelated pairs of opposites. But if you know the word's not the thing, what is it? You realise what its essence is. It's all a vibrating pattern of energy, the whole lot. It's never changed its true nature. So you can
non-conceptual awareness is also a concept. How is it more valid than the concept of conceptual awareness?
Well, I'm saying it's not valid. Drop that too. To say non-conceptual is just a way of translating or describing it. But just pause the thought. And without a concept, what are you?
Experience.
Experiencing.
Experiencing.
Experiencing
Without
something that's happening in the immediacy. If it's an experience, you need an experiencer. Experiencer having this experience. But experiencing is something that's happening in the immediacy at this moment. Then you say, I experience. You formed a subject, an experiencer. I experienced this, you formed an object. So you divided the experiencing conceptually into subject-object. Just the same with seeing. The ing on it gives us something that's happening in the immediacy, an activity of knowing. Then you say, I see, you've formed a subject. I see the chair of the table. You've seemingly split the functioning into subject-object, into duality. But have a look at it. Can there be a seer that's not seeing?
But whatever I take a look at and investigate, as you invite us to do, in a very powerful way, you're inviting us to engage in a concept, a conceptual challenge, to take us beyond concepts, which gives us an experience, hopefully a pure experience, beyond concept, which is non-conceptual, which I can readily see the benefits of. Like, it's very freeing. But does it give us necessarily insights and answers about the nature of things and the universe?
Well, insights come up of themselves. You'll see, they'll come up as words or thoughts, or ideas, images. You might be going along, somebody not even thinking of it, and all of a sudden somebody will, you might have heard it 1,000 times, that's what that actually means, or that's what that is. And it's not you that's having the insight. And that's our problem. We have an experience, or it might be a great, wonderful vision or some experience or thing like that. We set that up as a reference point then. We've got to get back to that. But realise anything you've had is dead and gone, that's finished with. Let it be. But if you're back in the moment, in the immediacy, that enables anything fresh and new that needs to come up. But while you're holding this previous experience, it won't happen.
Yes, that I see. Also struggle with, the fact that the point of it all is to get beyond concepts and to achieve non-conceptual awareness when we're surrounded by concepts. So if the nature of things is concepts, the fact that there are so many concepts and the fact that we have a mind and the fact that we do see dualism and what have you, points to the fact that that is part of the nature of things as well.
Yes,
because it's there.
This whole manifestation, you can't negate that is there. But it's a dualistic appearance. It doesn't fit the definition of reality. The definition of reality is that which never changes. And the manifestation is transient. It's constantly changing. So do your thoughts and feelings and emotions. They're transient. So they're still going to appear, but you see it for what it is. Appearance, Maya is an illusion.
Could it be that is the nature of things, that things are dualistic? And even if we can't...
They are, in essence. The reality of them is...
twist and doesn't take us anywhere, doesn't free us and doesn't achieve much. But could it be that it is just the nature of things?
The nature of things is not how it appears. It is real in its essence. But the pattern, shape and form is appearance only. It's the one essence that's vibrating, patterning, shaping and forming everything. See it as that. Concept, just talking about concept, what's a concept? You realise that a concept is just a mental construct. If you're not giving it that shape and form on it, it's just a vibrating pattern of energy like anything else. And from that point of view, you don't have to divide those concepts into good concept or bad concept. See everything as that. Like the fellow that went to the guru and asked the guru what to do, and the guru said, see everything as God. And he says, yeah, okay, so you go around, this is God, that's God, and something else is God, everything's God. And he comes to this village, and all the villagers come racing out of the village. They say, quick, get out of the road. There's an elephant gone mad in there. And the fellow says, that's all right, I see everything as God, I'll be right. So he goes in the village, and the elephant grabs hold of him, throws him up in the tree, breaks a couple of ribs and an arm, finishes up in hospital. He's in hospital and the guru comes and visits him. He says, hey, listen, he says, you told me to see everything is good. He says, I saw that elephant is gone. Look what he did to me. He says, you bloody idiot. Why didn't you see the people that told you to get out of the road is gone? So we can't pick and choose with one thing over another. This is it and that's not it. Everything is it. But the everything, in essence, is no thing. It only appears to be something. And nobody's ever gone beyond no thing.
The fact that these thoughts come so persistently, and that even if you succeed at pausing those thoughts for however long you can, and to the extent to which you might be able to stay in a non-conceptual awareness to a degree, still we're going to be surrounded by duality, appearance of duality in thoughts. We live, in this manner. Everything that we do involves some kind of a thought, and you might say an appearance of choice. I personally find that constant assault of these thoughts, and the fact that we're constantly up against it, not just challenging, but it causes me to go, well, so why? Why is it that I in order to be free, I am chained to this continuous battle to overcome what has been planted in my beingness, which is this mind, this brain, which thinks, which questions why, which sees duality. And this struggle, this constant contrast, in itself is a type of duality that we're living, isn't it? The pausing and the not pausing. You go from pause to thinking to pause to thinking, to whatever proportion you're able to achieve it. And yet that in itself is a dualistic experience between these two ways of being.
Yeah. Well, who is the questioner? Who asked why? You see that when you realise that the questioner is the very question itself, why? If that question is not being asked, there is no question. If there's no question, can there be a questioner without a question? They cancel each other out. And we use many metaphors to point it out, which I pointed out to you before. You go down to the ocean, and I'll say, get me a bucket of blue water out of the sea. You'll say, don't be stupid. Because you'll never get a bucket of blue water out of the sea. Does it stop the sea from being blue? You can pull that bucket of water out and look whichever way you like it, you'll never find any blueness in it. And you realise that there never was any blueness there at any time. But it still appears to be blue, and you can still admire the blue sea. But the difference is now, you go down there and see the blue sea and admire it, think it's all right, but the difference is you'll go down there never with any intention of getting a bucket of blue water out of it. And the old scriptural saying is, know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You no longer believe that there's any blue water in the sea, but you know the truth about it. Let it appear. Let it appear however it likes. The other one, if you stood on the shore, years ago, stood on the shore and look out to where the horizon is, where the sea and the sky met, people would say, don't lose sight of land, you'll fall off the edge of the earth. Who would believe that today? And you go down there and look at where the sea and the sky meet today, it seems as though that is the edge of the earth. It still looks as though it's saying it. But it's not, because it's been investigated. Been investigated and the truth known about it, scriptural saying applies, know the truth and the truth will set you free. You're free of the belief. And so let it appear. Many others. Another one is water in a mirage. You go driving down the road and what appears to be a pool of water there. You only got to drive up to it once and see through it. Next time it appears, your car's not going to get wet when you drive into it. You're not going to drown in it, or you can't get a drink out of it. Learn. So investigating yourself in the same way, this essence yourself. Dualism will still appear. Concepts will still appear. Thoughts, feelings, emotions will still appear. But you know the truth about it. You are that one essence that's appearing and expressing as everything. You are that cognizing emptiness, the knowing emptiness, and emptiness is forming all this manifestation. And the forms and patterns can be nothing other than the emptiness. The whys and the whats and the hows and the whens and it all disappear. It reveals itself to you naturally and effortlessly.
Yeah, you're saying the extent to which you can remain in the pause of thought.
Well, you can't. Don't try to remain in the pause.
Question.
Let the thought come up, and it comes up of itself after a while. See, when you see the falseness of something, you can no longer believe in it. And when you can no longer believe in the thought anymore, or the emotion it's causing, the anger, the fear, the intensity drops out of it. There is nothing that can live without energy. So if you're not putting the energy into the belief in it, that's keeping it there, holding it there, it loses its hold, and it dissipates and falls away all of itself. There's no you that can do anything about it, never was, or never will be. As I say, the very trying is resistance, and resistance is conflict. Conflict is disease.
It's implying that that this brings acceptance. The not subscribing to this thinking dual paradigm somehow brings acceptance of it.
Yeah, but you want to understand, we're left with what is. And what is means unaltered, unmodified, uncorrected. So that means it's neither accepted nor rejected, attached to or detached from, no preference, no partiality, no whatever the other one is, I've forgotten that. Doesn't matter. Yeah, but just everything is left as it is. So acceptance might come up. Instead of leave that as it is, it does what it's necessary to do. Rejection might come up. Leave everything left as it is. It's free to move along. If the fear or the anger comes up, move into the fear instead of moving away from it. If you move away from it, there's an entity having a fear, and I don't want it, resistance. But if you move right into it, if you are total fear, what is it then? If you've got no reference point to measure it from, move right into you are the actual fear. Is it fear then? Something fresh and new that you might never experience before, a sensation, and it dissipates of itself.
Yeah, my mum, when I was a little kid, I started talking about fear, and she said, "Look at your shadow, and the sun's shining really brightly, and you're running away from it. You turn around and face the shadow. What is there? There's nothing there."
Yes, there's an old saying: "Do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain."
Yeah.
Where does physical pain fit into that? So let's say someone
Physical-
holds a physical flame to your skin and it's burning and you're screeching with pain.
Well, the physical sign is physical pain is a sign the body, it's a sign of the body, something wrong with the body. It's a cry out from the body to do something about it. It needs to be attended to. See a doctor, take an aspirin, do put something over the cut. But the psychological pain is all mental. Physical pain is something, intelligence telling you, hey, there's something wrong here, do something about it. The psychological pain, that psychological pain can cause knots in the guts, aches in the heart, lumps in the throat that are seemingly very real. But if you go right into them and look for them, you realise it's thought caused, they dissipate. The physical pain has got some source that's caused it. It might be an ulcer, it could be something, a lump in a cut or whatever, broken bone, rheumatism. That's the body crying out, do something about this pattern.
And when one person inflicts pain on another, do you see that as an appearance of dualism, or is that part of the intelligence hurting itself?
It all comes about, as I told you last week, all these things come about from self-gratification. Why would you rape somebody if it wasn't for self-gratification? Why would you rob somebody? Why would you want what the other have? While ever that self-centre's there and the belief in it, will the world go on with all this psychological suffering, wars and everything like that will go on. But, everybody in this room has got a concept about you. You have got a concept about everybody else in the room, and you've got a concept about yourself. If you see that there's no concept as the actual, there's neither concept, the one they got about you, the one you got about yourself is not real, then whoever is superior to you, whoever is inferior to you. So you couldn't give a shit what anybody else thinks of you then, because you've lost that, trying to protect this image, and you don't want anything of the other one. And that's which comes along in your life will come along quite naturally and inevitably. That which is going out of your life will move away just as naturally and inevitably. But while ever the self-centered there, there's going to be the wars, all the rest of it and everything else that goes on, the pain, the suffering, all to satisfy or gratify that self-centre, seemingly make it right. Doesn't matter what it's doing to the other so-called self-centre.
What I'm noticing about this logical capacity is that it seems when it looks at an experience, okay, you said pause a thought, you're still alive, all your processes are going, everything's happening. And that logical process has a tendency to want to dismiss that and say, well, that's nothing. And only the complex, only things that can be put into a concept are honored by that process. And so then, since it's dismissing the pause, it automatically puts itself back into gear, looking for the complexity, which it honors the complexity and says, oh, this is the United Nations function, and this is like, we're going to have world peace out of this, and we're going to move with all nations and they make some big, complicated system of world movements, and all that movement is somehow honored, and this is what we're striving for. And so then it's always got it has a gravity of its own that goes toward complexity and more thoughts.
Yeah, that's what I say. When you're into the thought will keep vibrating. It'll go on forever. More and more. Something else will come up.
I think, and to me, it just seemed like a powerful moment. If I could notice that I'm dismissing this pause, and I could say, do I need to dismiss it? I mean, am I running away from it? Or just try to investigate, well, what is this dismissal?
Yeah. But who are you talking about? Well, I'll dismiss it. I want to. Who are you talking about?
This process, or this capability of a human to have an abstract logic and
it's not there again. You're going to the wrong point again. It's not the capability of the human. It's the life essence that's functioning and patterning and expressing through the human that has the capability. The human has never done, will never do, or could ever do anything at all of its own. Give credit where credit is due. That animating life essence that's functioning and manifesting this whole cosmos, if you like to call it that. It's the one essence.
Well, somehow, are there any keys to noticing? Because, I mean, like sometimes it seems powerful to notice, okay, I'm dismissing the silence. And so then I have a kind of an automatic gravity that's pushing me toward commotion. Yeah. Can I just know? I mean, can noticing be happening, or somehow happening more or less?
Yeah, always say, innately you've already known this. It's been known all your life. You've had taste of it all through your life, and then it seemingly gets obscured. So it's already been cognized, where the Buddha calls it cognizing emptiness. Not that we are cognizing emptiness, but emptiness has this capacity of cognizing or knowing. So all it needs to do is to recognize. Suppose a thought or something will come up, and it might come up, hey, have a look at this again, and there'll be a recognizing of it. And that'll be there more and more frequently when you start to break the old habit of going into the thought and looking in the wrong direction. The natural recognition will come up continually. And you see, you never lose sight of it. And in that pause, if you start to notice in that pause, there's a subtle sense of well-being there. What I call, for want of a better term, uncaused joy. Like, it's not the opposite of joy and sadness. It's not the opposite, or an uncaused love. It's not the opposite of love and hate in the human form. They're the nearest expressions you can put onto that natural state that's there, the sense of well-being. That's always constantly the background of everything that's appeared on it. You start to notice that when you get, and then in the pause, and recognising the pause, in that pause, it's not just a vacuum or a void. There's an innate knowing there. Pure intelligence.
So that's a good hint, just to say, hey, that's there. Happiness for no reason happens to be in that pause.
Yes.
And you could just notice that.
Yes. You don't understand, you'll never ever get peace of mind. People talk about peace of mind. It'll never ever happen.
Without mind.
Yeah. Yes, because the mind, mind vibrates, is never at peace. So the peace is when the mind is not. That's why the ancient called it the peace that passes all understanding, because it can't be grasped with a concept, it can't be understood with the mind. That natural peace is there when thought is paused. And you begin to recognise that more, and naturally you want to stay with it more and more. So you'll dismiss the confusion and the complexities more and more to sit with the natural essence that you are. And you don't have to deliberately sit, it'll come up throughout the day anywhere. You realise you're never away from it. See, you go outside on a cloudy day. Would you say the sun's not in the sky? Why? Because you know the sun doesn't leave the sky, but the cloud's seemingly obscuring it. Then you'll ask yourself, well, what forms the cloud? And you realise the sun itself forms a cloud. And you realise the sun doesn't set out to form a cloud. All the sun does is shine of itself. It's a self-shining sun. It doesn't need another light to make it shine. Its nature is to shine. In that self-shiningness, it forms heat that evaporates water, that comes up and seemingly obscures it. And all the sun does is continue to shine, and the wind might come and blow the cloud away, or the cloud might cool and come down as rain, hail, or whatever. And just because of that self-shining sun, the rain comes down and we won't be a seed in the ground and get nourishment out of that water and sprout. Life continues to function all because of that self-shining nature of the sun. When they call it self-shining, ever-fresh presence awareness. That's what you are. That's self-shining presence awareness, in which body patterns form, thoughts, complexity, good, bad, everything else forms, vibration appears and disappears. But if that sun wasn't shining, there'd be no cloud, there'd be no plant, wouldn't be anything. If that life essence wasn't there, there'd be no thoughts, there'd be no feelings, no emotions, nothing whatsoever. Again, give credit to where it's due. You are that. Don't forget it. And you'll never grasp to that with some concept, but you can't negate it.
That's the key there. Don't forget it.
Yes.
Well, I mentioned to you last time, but you were doing things. It was after the class, but it'd be good for me to understand something. I think you've clarified what I am. I understand that. The mind seems to be more, I guess it's sort of a follow-on from what I was saying before. The mind that I'm experiencing seems to be more chatty and thinky and rushing around than it ever has. And I know not to believe it, but at the same time it can get tiring.
Yeah.
And I figure I just have to write it out, so to speak. It'll die eventually.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
Well, maybe you've taken the brakes off,
Yeah,
taken the boundaries and limitations off,
absolutely.
and it will chatter along for a while. But left as it is, it's going to die down, isn't it? You don't try to alter it, modify it, correct it, or put the brakes on again.
Yeah.
Leave it as it is, it'll settle down.
Yeah, I figured. It's been going pretty crazy for maybe a month or so. I mean, obviously different people, different experiences, but
Yeah.
I mean, it could be months, it could be years, it could be seconds, who knows?
Yeah. And giving you much trouble?
It's just tiring.
Yeah.
I'm not miserable or happy or whatever. It's just
Got no vested interest in it?
sometimes I fall for it.
Yeah,
But mostly
you might for a while.
Mostly it just carries on, and it could be, I could wake up at 1 in the morning. Everyone experiences this, I guess, and it could belt on until 7 o'clock when the alarm goes off. You just sit there and let it go, but it doesn't give me a break. It's just.
Well, take that thing, that thing that thinks it needs a breakaway too. Leave it to
That's going to make it worse.
you think so? It might be the last impediment that's blocking it. No, sometimes there's chatter here, and sometimes long periods of silence. But neither one is preferable, because they're both experiences. What I am is the experiencing, which enables them to come and to go. Stay as that. Couldn't give a shit about the experiences, whether it is silence or whether it is chatter, They're no concern, because they couldn't take place without that life essence. They keep confirming the beingness that you are, the knowing that you are.
Sort of like in what you're saying to having a flower, and like the mind feeds itself, the flower's feeding itself, and then, then be the awareness, looking at the flower feeding itself, and then just stop feeding it, and then just look at the flower. Whenever the flower manifests, let it. If you're not feeding it, eventually it just dies all by itself, until it's just silent. There's just silence. And like Bob said, when the mind comes up, let it. Doesn't matter. So what? Let it. Let it be the chatterbox monkey like it's sitting on the floor right now. Doesn't matter. And the other thing, when you're talking about Richard, it's like in a sense the mind's organised to actually find itself. The mind's organised thought is designed to find thought. Allow thought to find the silence amongst the thought. Not trying to find it. Just the noticing, just again step back as awareness and allow thought to be thought. They'll actually see that amongst thought there's spaces.
Yeah. You realise you don't have to look for silence. There's more silence in this room than what there is sound. More stillness in this room than what there is movement. You go outside, it's the same. So it's always there. The base in which sound and movement appear on is constantly with you. You don't have to sit down and try and isolate it. It's the background of everything.
And that's a statement I haven't heard before, like you saying that there's more silence almost in any ambient than there is more noise or speech. There's more silence, and just it amounts to not denying it or just noticing it.
What was that last
Just
bit?
to notice it.
Yeah, notice it. Recognise it's always there.
What I was saying, Bob, was that most people are trapped in the thought part.
Yeah.
They're trapped in the noise. So I put myself in the noise. And this is the solution out of the noise, is to allow the noise to be what it is. But most people, when they're in the noise, looking for the noise.
Yeah, and trying to change
They're
the noise.
trying to find this other thing in amongst the noise. And it's there. But step back, allow the seeing of the noise, but realising the silence is amongst it. And then it's almost like someone described it as like a paling fence. You're walking past a paling fence and you're looking at the cracks, but you're actually looking through the cracks at the other side. Now you can focus on the paling fence, which is the noise, but if you focus on the cracks, you'll notice that when you're going through all the cracks, what you don't see is that tiny little bit behind the paling fence, and then everything else is space. Between all those cracks is this vast space. So all that's in between you and the vast space is just this paling fence, which is the thought. That's it. You can stop at any moment and look through the crack, and it's like, what do you see? It's just this vastness, which is perpetually this. Does that make sense, Richard?
Yeah, I think we talked about that before, about the walking by a fence and just noticing you could see the yard and the space behind it. You don't even have to look at the fence, even though there's only little cracks. still your awareness can go there. That's a good metaphor.
Another thing is that you're actually seeing everything all the time. You know, the seeing is happening. You as a separate entity are not doing the seeing. Everything appears in the seeing. And an insight, the essence of an insight is seeing. Insights come and go. So the content of awareness is appearing and disappearing. And if you try and see the duration of a thought, you can actually see that it doesn't have any duration. It's an ephemeral appearance. But what is seeing? Where are you seeing from? You know? It's as though we're always looking out there and getting identified, finding our identity in things or situations or events, emotions or whatever. It may be in here as well. But it's just an illusion, it's Maya. You know, my true identity has no substance or independent nature apart from anything else. But when I identify with thoughts or things, then I'm trying to grab onto something to give some substance to this apparent separate entity. And that is just an appearance. So what I am is no thing. Suffused with the capacity of this knowing. And really knowing is all that's happening. There's no knower and there's no real known. The known is a constant appearance and disappearance of so-called things and events. But this moment right now is the only time there is. And you realise that you can't get out of this now. You don't have to have a practice or a method to stay in the now. You can never get out of this now. And like Bob says, start from the fact that you are that. And then it's simple. And what is true is always simple. All our problems are in the complexities of this so-called jigsaw puzzle. We imagine that there's a piece missing. We've got to find that missing piece or whatever. But it's all just mind stuff. And it's like a caged bird. You can open the door of the cage and the bird will just sit there. And what we're being pointed to is not only the cage door is open, but the cage doesn't exist. You are already that. You are already free. There's no need to do anything, go anywhere or get anything. Just realise that it's all perfect.
What I noticed when you said we're always looking outside, and then I noticed myself just seeing you and just kind of like looking left and right and up and down, like, how are these words? What are they meaning? How somehow receiving them, but somehow I wasn't seeing how they hit here, because like I was only looking outside. I wasn't looking here and feeling my reaction to them, or I wasn't like a witness off to the side looking, oh, here's Richard, and he's listening to Gilbert, and then I didn't see it as just kind of like a dialogue of the whole room, but I just saw it as like, okay, this is the screen that's in front of me, and I kind of thought about how I wasn't including this part, and I don't know if that's what you meant by always looking outside.
Well, generally that's what people, so-called people, they're identified with the world and what's going on and all the rest of it, and the whole drama of having to get something or avoid something or whatever. But Nisargadatta said something quite interesting. He said, be conscious of the consciousness. That's all it is. It's as simple as that. It's just being present to the presence that you are. Everything is consciousness. And this activity of knowing, which is consciousness, the separation disappears. No more problem. But it's subtle. It's like being shown freedom. But no, I'm not ready yet. I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Later on, tomorrow.
Yeah, being shown freedom and say, oh yeah, right, that. I'm almost there.
Exactly. And that's what everyone does. And there are lots of people who show you methods of how to get to freedom, by doing this, this, and this. But
Anyway. When you were Richard, you started me to say you were hearing what Gilbert was saying. Where were you hearing that from? You're relating it to in here. Where were you hearing it from?
After a point, I got to, like I was off, I don't know, I was just seeing the whole room or seeing, I was somehow including whatever that insight was. It was including everything.
Yeah,
instead
so
of just being,
you weren't isolating it to a me hearing, so it was just hearing, wasn't it? Just
right. Before, it seems like when you isolate to a me here, then that's an unconscious thing. It's just a lump of assumption. It says, okay, this unconscious thing here, black box is seen out there and over there, and oh no, someone's coming in the door, but then this black box is unconscious or not in the mix somehow.
Yeah, well, that's a habit we've had for years, and now start to recognise that there is no inner or outer, just the hearing, the seeing, tasting, touching, smelling. If you hear the car going past out there, you can say, I'm hearing it from here. But are you? But take it out to the other end, to where the car is. It's an experiment like that. Okay, time has caught up with us. Thank you.
Life is a great experiment.